Good afternoon and welcome to Law and Crime. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks so much for joining us today. We're following the live trial today of Jerry Burns in Iowa. 18-year-old Michelle Martinko was found stabbed to death in her family's car in a mall parking lot all the way back in 1979. Well, now 39 years after Martinko's death, police were able to match DNA found to the scene to Burns. He's 66 years old right now. We're going to take you live to that trial, and he is facing life in prison without parole.
Can that be applied in cases where there's a mixture of DNA and the male donor is the major donor to the mixture?
Yes. So we can, if we have a YSTR mixture, meaning there's at least more than one male present in that, if we have a major component that we can deduce from that profile, we can then use that for comparisons as well.
Are YSTR testing procedures generally accepted as valid procedures by the scientific community?
Yes. As a matter of fact, the FBI and the Armed Forces DNA Lab have been using it for more than 10 years.
Do the techniques and procedures used in YSTR testing produce accurate and reliable results?
Yes.
So if two samples share the same YSTR profile, what is the significance of that match?
Well, the statistic that we use for calculating such a match is called the counting method, at which point we would search our accredited mandated SOP database, where we're looking at a small fraction of males in the United States, and we see if we can find that profile in that database. If we can't, or if we can, we develop a statistic based off that match with a 95% confidence interval.
Is this a generally accepted way to present the relative rarity of a profile in the population?
Yes, for YSTRs, this is the method we use.
And has YSTR analysis been admitted in other court proceedings in the United States?
Yes.
And for the record, does YSTR analysis differ from STR analysis in that you can't really compare the results with each other?
Correct. So if I've developed an STR profile and a YSTR profile, those two cannot be compared because we're testing totally different locations.
So, for example, if in this case there was a previous STR profile developed by one of the analysts, that shouldn't be used to compare to a YSTR profile developed.
Correct.
Is that kind of like apples to oranges?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so did your laboratory, Bodie Laboratory, receive evidence from the Cedar Rapids Police Department and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations Laboratory regarding the investigation of a cold case homicide involving an extract from blood scrapings taken from a gear in a known buccal swab of an individual by the name of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Start by just going over a couple of business forms here from Bodie. Ms. Nash, here you go. I'll take the CD from you there, and I'll trade you for that.
All right.
So 17P, can you tell us what that is?
This is a copy of the inventory for this particular case. So it's the documentation of when we receive items of evidence and what we do with them when we take it into the lab initially. So our first time opening the envelope, what we see, and what it's labeled as, and any item numbers. Item numbers.
And is this a record kept in the regular course of business activity to document the chain of custody of items, among other things that you receive in the laboratory?
Yes, so we do have separate chain of custody documents. This inventory does document who had the evidence at the time and what they did during their initial examination of those items.
Okay. Move to enter into evidence 17P, Your Honor.
Mr. Spies, have you had an opportunity to review 17P?
I have, Your Honor, and we have no objection.
17P will be received and made part of the record. P as in Paul, is that correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
P as in Paul?
Paul.
Thank you.
And can we publish that, Your Honor?
You may.
Just so we know, while this comes up here, and when we're referring to items later in the report that you developed as a result of this, do you assign a Bodie item number to the items that come into your laboratory?
Yes, so when evidence is initially arrived at our agency, we assign it a unique case number. Once the evidence is taken into the lab and we're deciding what needs to be processed, each item that's being processed is given a unique item number.
Okay. You witness Nash, can you hand me that? There. And so, is this the case number here then that this was assigned by Bodie?
Yes, CCA 1961-0082.
And does this here indicate then the items that were received for your analysis?
Yes,
Okay. So the same number appears here on the first item with a hyphen or dash. E, is that 01?
yes, EO1 refers to evidence item 1.
And when that arrived, did it have a designation, looks like an I in front of it,
I.1.3, gear shift extract.
described as a gear shift extract?
Mhm.
And then the next item underneath that, same case number, hyphen R02.
RO2, that refers to a reference, so evidence items get E numbers, references get R numbers, and it's just in sequential order as we have those items of evidence.
And so does this indicate then that you received an item described as the buccal swab from Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes.
We could scroll down on that just momentarily here, and this is what you're talking about as far as the description of the items as they came in and documenting the time and such on the right of when the descriptions were noted and the items came in.
Yes.
May I approach witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
I'll trade you again. I'll give you a 17Q.
17Q, okay.
Quiet. And ask you if you recognize that document.
Yes, this is the initial chain of custody that we generated once we received the item of evidence and assigned it a unique case number. We document where that evidence came from, the tracking numbers, what common carriers such as FedEx or UPS or USPS delivered those items, and we have documentation of who checks it in and out of our evidence section.
And is this a record that's kept in the regular course of business activity with Bodie Technology?
Yes.
Move to enter state 17Q, Your Honor.
Without objection.
17Q will be received and made part of the record.
Scroll down for that. And if we could publish that, Your Honor?
You may.
Yeah. And does 17Q document the arrival of the item that we previously noted and described as the gear shift?
Yes, along with other DNA extracts.
Okay. And after its arrival then at Bodie Labs, it was the items then secured for further analysis?
Yes.
All right. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
Trade you one more time here. Well, not one more time. Second to last time. This is 17S here, and do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is the chain of custody generated for the second submission of evidence in this case.
And as previously noted, is that the chain of custody form documenting the arrival of the known buccal swabs of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes,
Okay. Is this also a document kept in the regular course of business activity?
yes.
Okay. Move to enter state 17S.
Again, without objection.
Okay. 17S will also be received and made part of the record.
And yeah, if we could just put that up really quick.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And maybe you can tell us then, Ms. Nash, when that second item, the buccal swabs, arrived. Let's scroll up there.
So these items, this item of evidence was received June 4th, 2019.
Okay. And does this document then the chain of custody, the evidence until the time that it was sent back?
Yes,
Okay, and I think on the bottom, we have one last date there. November of 19, November 12th.
yes. So this is when we're finished with testing. We notify the client, or the client notifies us that they would like the evidence back. At that point, we package the evidence and draw down any extracts and return them to the submitting agency.
Okay. May I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
You may.
And the witness would have marked as State's Exhibit number 12. I'll have a few questions about that. First of all, what is this document? How would you describe it?
This is the final report I authored dated July 10th, 2019, detailing my results and conclusions for the testing in this case.
And was this the report that you completed based upon the request of the Cedar Rapids Police Department and the Iowa DCI lab to examine an extract from a gear shift selector in order to develop a profile from it and compare it to a profile developed from the known buccal swab of Jerry Lynn Burns?
Yes,
And was this document made at or near the time you conducted your analysis of those items?
yes,
And is this also a record kept in the regular course of business activity?
yes,
Does this appear to be a fair and accurate copy of that report?
yes. This is the complete report.
And do you believe this report would be helpful in explaining and helping explain the testimony regarding the results of your analysis?
Yes.
Before we get to that, can you explain the process you used to test these items? I think you gave us a kind of a general description, but maybe just refresh us on that.
Sure. So the general workflow is, again, from sampling. We receive the item of evidence. We take it into the lab. We take a small portion of it. We sample that item, add chemicals to it during our extraction process to help release DNA that may be present on the item. We then quantify. Again, that's the estimation of DNA on that item. This allows us to appropriately target in our tests. We then amplify. So this means to make copies of the DNA locations that we're interested in. For this specific case, we're interested in locations on the Y chromosome. Then we separate and visualize. This generates an EPG or electropharogram that I look at and verify that all the peaks are actual alleles and remove any artifacts. For this particular case, because the gear shift agency description, that item that actually arrived was an extract, a DNA extract. So we skipped the sampling and the extraction and the quantitation part of our tests.
All right, so we've been listening to DNA expert Christina Nash. She was called, another DNA expert called here in this case, Jerry Burns, out of Iowa. We got to take a quick break right now on Law and Crime. When we come back, we'll be back live. Stay with us here.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. So we all hit a rough patch at one point or another. There's no shame in admitting that. Many times it concerns money, and maybe you're having trouble staying afloat. So our topic today is, when should you consider filing for bankruptcy? Bankruptcy is for those who can't fulfill their financial obligations and need a do-over. But bankruptcy is reserved for only those extreme situations, and a court is going to look at the following. You've tried but failed to work out a settlement with your creditors. You've turned to consumer credit counseling, but it hasn't resulted in a solution. A court ordered that your wages be seized or garnished to satisfy your debts. You have outstanding medical bills that you just can't pay. You either don't have assets or not enough to pay off your debts, or your savings account, if you have one, is not going to help either. Okay, so you want to declare bankruptcy, but which kind? There are two that apply to individuals. Chapter 7, where your assets that can be sold off by a court will be in order to pay off your debts. This includes clothing, jewelry, artwork, or property. Or Chapter 13. Now, this option's better for people who have a steady income because here you just reorganize your debts and develop a plan to pay back over time. There are a lot of advantages to filing for bankruptcy. Namely, your creditors will stop coming after you, and in certain cases, you won't have to repay some of your debt at all. But remember, bankruptcy can seriously hurt your credit score, and it doesn't relieve you of having to pay specific debts like alimony, taxes, child support, or mortgage payments. So before you file, consult with an attorney first. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Hi there. You might wonder what a famous Hollywood celebrity like me is doing reading in the dark. Is this some new sort of Hollywood method acting? No, this is quite real.
Did you know that Americans use about 4 times as much energy per year as the global average? We waste energy left and right despite the fact that the dirty fossil fuels we use to power our energy sources wreak havoc on the natural world and destroys valuable wildlife habitats.
By reading with my solar-powered night vision goggles, I'm saving energy and looking sleek.
You don't have to sit in the dark like Ed Begley Jr. to save the world. Fight climate change by speaking up for cleaner, smarter energy, including rooftop solar.
Oh, that's way better. Oh.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.
Both my legs were amputated due to an IED. It's when you start to try to get back into like an everyday life. I absolutely felt like I lost some of my purpose. There must be something more. When DAV came into my life, they gave me a new mission. I could still be a productive member of society, could still support a family.
The DAV gave him that sense of structure and purpose again to get his life back together.
Visit DAV.org to learn more about our mission.
New York. Also, live coverage of the cold case murder of an Iowa teenager in 1979. Prosecutors say Jerry Burns, now 66 years old, left behind blood evidence when he randomly stabbed and killed Michelle Martinko back when he was 25. DNA tests finally pointed towards Burns, but he says he's innocent. Live coverage of these cases on Law and Crime this week.
And welcome back to Law and Crime. We are live right now in Jerry Burns' trial. This is the man accused of killing a Cedar Rapids teenager more than 40 years ago. We've been listening to a DNA expert here, and I want to intro our guest right now for the afternoon. Ashley McMahan, criminal defense attorney, is here with us to break all of this down. Ashley, as we've been listening to Christina Nash, this DNA analyst, what do you think so far about her testimony? We learned that basically she was going through the evidence and looking at the labels of what everything was.
I think she's been very credible. She's been very methodical on the stand. I like her testimony. And I have to say, Angelica, I'm really glad that Law and Crime Network is covering this case, because so often when we hear about cases in the news where DNA evidence is involved, it's usually because it's exonerating someone who was innocent and was incarcerated regardless because of circumstantial evidence, and that's, obviously something terrible for everyone involved. And oftentimes it involves systemic racism within the system. And here we have DNA evidence being used to potentially provide closure to a family for a crime that occurred in 1979. I mean, DNA evidence has come a long way and certainly has a long way to go. But this is really fascinating. And if it turns out that the jury believes the science behind this, I think we're looking at a guilty verdict that is, 30, 40 years in the making.
Yeah, Ashley, and as you said, the science behind all of this is really what's the most incredible part about this, because this was so long ago, and all these findings come so much, so many years after the fact. From what we've heard so far, and knowing, as you said, how DNA is such a big part of this case particularly, and this is not the first DNA expert we've heard from, do you think on the other side here, if you're a juror sitting there, that you're just like, okay, we heard more DNA, more DNA. Are they getting tired of all the DNA talk?
I think you're probably right. I'm sure they are tired of all the science talk. I mean, I know I, for one, fell asleep during my science classes in school, mainly because, that's why I became an attorney and not a scientist. And it is a lot of technical testimony. However, if you're the defense in this case, really the only avenue that I think that you have is you've got to attack the credibility of the DNA or any sort of evidence that was gathered at the scene, because it may have degraded over time. And we've got so much time here. So I think if you're the prosecution, you have to go over and over and over the science to really hammer it into the jury and say, hey, look, no, this stuff is still valid. Yes, it may degrade a little bit, but we're telling you what the chain of custody was. We're telling you exactly how this stuff was stored. And we have scientists up here who are reliable experts testifying to the fact that even if it is this old, we can still get a positive match.
Right. So no matter how much and quantity-wise of the DNA we hear, it is still supremely important here. We're going to go back live now to listen to this expert continue. Again, Christina Nash is on the stand.
Probability calculation.
So this is referred to as the counting method. Random match probability is what is usually reported for STR statistics.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. Those numbers are usually much higher and what people are used to hearing on TV, 1 in quintillion, 1 in sextillion. With YSTRs, we won't see statistics like that because of the paternal inheritance of the Y chromosome. We know it exists in more than one individual because you had to obtain it from someone else. So father to son, son to grandson, so on. Any paternal cousins, uncles, all male relatives would have the same YSTR profile, barring any type of mutation. So the counting method is used here. So it gives a statistic that doesn't look as nice as a STR statistic, but it is significant for YSTRs.
And when you say there would be more than one individual that would have this profile, and you talked about the line, and would that be in the same ancestral line?
Yes, that would be in the same paternal line. So grandson, grandfather, father, son, grandson, all those male individuals, if they're all of the same paternal line, would have that same YSTR profile.
So do you then take that profile that you developed and use the information that's on this report to come up with some calculations?
Yes, so we have a database that we search. It's referred to the US YSTR database. It's a subset of male individuals in the database to represent the United States as a whole. And obviously, it doesn't contain everyone in that database, but that's why we apply a confidence interval to our statistic. So looking at the statistic, we have different database groups that we search through. So African American, Asian, Caucasian, Hispanic, and Native American. And then we give a total for the combined populations within this US YSTR database. So in the African American database, we did not see this partial profile at all in the about 1,300 individuals. In the Asian database, we didn't see the profile at all in 650 individuals. In the Caucasian database, we didn't see this profile at all in about 1,400 individuals. Hispanic database, again, we didn't see the profile at all in 961 individuals. And in the Native American database, we didn't see this profile at all in 882 individuals. So that gives us a total for combined populations of 0 and 5,305 that we didn't see this profile. We then apply a confidence interval to this statistic which basically translates into me saying that we are 95% confident that we would expect only one individual and about 1,700 male individuals to have this YSTR profile.
So is that your overall finding then, with consideration to all the databases mentioned here, that you'd only expect to see one profile on 1,773 that would be similar to what you developed?
Yes, that would be an exact match to the partial profile. So if I had a room of 1,700 male individuals, I would expect to see this YSTR profile once.
What does that decimal point number refer to that's underneath it?
So that's our profile frequency. It's just the mathematical conversion of the 1 in 1,700. So this is 0.0564% of U.S. males would have this YSTR profile, this partial YSTR profile.
So you're including less than, well, not quite 0%, but 0.0564% could potentially be included as having this partial profile.
Correct, 0.00564%.
And then in regards to the number of individuals or the percentage of individuals that would be excluded from having this partial profile, can you give us that figure?
Yes, so that would just be 100 minus the 0.0564, and that's about 99.94% of male individuals, U.S. male individuals would be excluded from this partial profile.
You know, for a YSTR profile, based upon your experience in identifying, in developing and comparing YSTR profiles, is this a significant number?
Yes, this number is expected with the partial profile that we have using YSTRs.
So with the partial profile that you developed, this is a number that you would expect to see?
Yes. There are instances when we have a database search that results in us seeing a profile. So this would change the frequency. So the number of observations, instead of 0, we would have seen it once or twice, or 3 times here, 5 times there, and it would change our total frequency. For this particular profile, we did not see this profile at all in the database.
And these numbers, are they intended then based upon your practices?
All right. So, Ashley, we have Christina here continuing to now go through a lot of the data points that we have here. You see her mentioning things and pointing out what matched and what didn't based on this chart. This is all very important here because this is basically going to point the finger to Burns, right?
Yes, that is exactly what the prosecution is hoping it will do. And what she's explaining here is that they're looking at a Y chromosome. You know, women have 2 X chromosomes, so you eliminate automatically from your pool of statistical analysis any females whose DNA this could have been because of the presence of the Y chromosome. And then she went further to explain what the statistical probability is that it is anyone of any different ethnic group. So that's why when you do programs like 23andMe and things like that, they can trace back what's a more likely DNA profile for a particular ethnicity versus a different one. And what she is saying here is that basically in a room full of what would be 1,700 men, she would only expect to see this particular partial profile in one individual. So that I believe she said her analysis brought her to 0.0056%, which is not like, hey, that's 100%, but almost, it's virtually impossible that it would be anybody else who gave us this DNA that we analyzed. So her testimony, while being slow and methodical, is actually very scientifically impactful for the prosecution's case.
Right, sifting out that detail out of it, that percentage that that she mentions is very, very important here. We are going to continue to listen to the DNA analyst after we take this quick break here. Stay with us on Law and Crime.
Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Listen, I don't have to tell you that breakups can get complicated. Who gets the dog? What happens to the pictures? Do you delete the person off social media? But one of the most important issues, what happens if you share a bank account with your ex who just took out all the money? Let's discuss your options. By law, joint owners of a bank account each have a right to the funds. So technically, your ex could empty the whole account, even if you're the one who put the money there in the first place. Instead, think about requiring multiple signatures for withdrawals or having each person only own part of the account. But in the case of marriage, the law may help you. Yes, your ex, prior to divorce, may have the right to empty the whole joint account, but that doesn't mean he or she is off the hook. A court could order your ex to reimburse you a portion if it was taken out for improper purposes. This could be seen as dissipation or wasting of marital assets, and your ex may have to pay attorney's fees and costs associated with collecting. Also, his or her share of the marital property could be negatively adjusted. Oh, and shocker, courts aren't going to look too favorably on the person that spent that money on a mistress or paramour. Oh, and if your ex empties an account after divorce papers are filed, he or she may be in serious trouble because a court sometimes orders that no withdrawals can be made once the divorce process starts. Not all's fair in love, war, and money. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life, pain behind one eye, dizziness or blurry vision. Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
And welcome back to Law and Crime. We're following Jerry Burns' trial live right now. He's the man accused of killing a teenager more than 40 years ago. And this trial is all centering around DNA. And that's who we've been listening to right now. We've been listening to a DNA analyst. And one of the things we heard, Ashley, right right recently was how the DNA that they pulled cannot ID any bodily fluid. So they had asked her if any bodily fluids or anything would be able to be determined from this DNA that they grabbed. And she said they were not able to do that. Do you think that even with that fact that hurts the prosecution's case here in any way?
Not really, because I believe what they're really trying to get at is, hey, did you get any semen? Because that's, would be an obvious indicator that this would be a male perpetrator versus a female, right? But what this expert has been able to go over was that the presence of that Y chromosome, which we also know is only present in male DNA. So, I think the defense is kind of trying to throw a little curveball in there and see if they can muddy up the waters and maybe make this a little bit more confusing for the jury. And because there is so much science involved, if I were the defense team, that's exactly what I'd be doing as well. But I think if the prosecution can kind of recover from this and explain that a little bit better, they may even have to do it in closing argument and kind of just explain it as a layperson, because oftentimes it's difficult to get that out in a redirect examination, once it's already out on cross. Even if the expert testified to it, it may be harder for the jury to understand from the expert than it would be to understand from the attorney, who can put it into, into regular terms that people like you and I could understand, who are not DNA analysts every single day of our lives. So hopefully that's what the prosecution's going to do in this case.
All right, absolutely, Ashley, thanks. We're going to actually go back and listen to Jerry Burns' police interview. They have taken a break right now in that courtroom. So this is from the day he got arrested. This was December 19th, 2018. And again, this is still about 39 years after the crime took place. Let's listen.
When you became involved in the reopening of the investigation of Ms. Martinko's murder, you told us that you had a conversation with Linda Sauer from the Division of Criminal Investigation Laboratory, right?
I had a conversation with Linda Sauer, yes.
And this is when she told you about the results of the testing that she had done.
That's correct.
And this would be the testing that was done in 2005?
That's correct.
In that conversation, and she testified about this last week, she told you that on the gear shift selector, the specimen obtained from Exhibit I, that she couldn't determine whether the male profile on that shift selector came from saliva, mucus, semen, or skin cells. Is that right?
Yes, I recall that conversation.
Yeah. So, she also told you that the blood type that was raised from the shift selector was blood type A.
That's correct.
And that's a common blood type in the American population.
Correct.
She also told you that there were too few loci obtained from that male profile to submit that profile to CODIS.
That's correct.
That you needed, 15 loci to submit it to CODIS?
I believe that's right.
And she only was able to extract or identify 11 on the gear.
All right. So that was not Jerry Burns' interview with police. That was a part of when they are talking about the information that they speak of in the interview with police. So we're going to play you that clip right now.
I remember hearing any rumors or how she died. You ever remember hearing how she died? So we're going to collect it today and send it to the lab. There's your copy of the search warrant.
Never seen one of these before.
Yeah, it's... Well, I only need this one since we're not doing the other.
Okay.
So I got some gloves here. All it is a little Q-tip. I just collect it from inside the mouth. It's not,
This takes a few days
yeah,
at the lab, and we'll
Okay.
and I just need to collect a little from the other side.
contact you afterwards, let you know
Okay.
the results. And
Okay.
I'm just thinking, I'm just spitballing here, but hold on, it's probably my wife here. Yep, that's my wife. I'm just thinking, you know, we kind of know going in that this is probably going to be a match.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why would that be?
Well, we were kind of hoping you'd tell us. The reality is, oh my gosh, what does she need? The reality is we're not here on a whim. We're here to confirm what we already know. I already collected some DNA from you that you got rid of before. And so I'm telling you, Jerry, I already know that your DNA is going to match the DNA that we have on file.
Just what the heck would I have gotten rid of?
Well, people get rid of stuff all the time. Just throw it away. But I think that's kind of irrelevant to what we're talking about here. Jerry, so the reality is we have your DNA at the crime scene. And so we know you were there that night this happened. But what we don't know, Jerry, is why it happened. There's a lot of reasons things happen in life, and there might be an explanation for this that would help us better understand what happened, that would not make this, you know, a terrible thing for you. But I don't know what that explanation would be if I don't hear it from you.
Well, I don't know.
How would we get your DNA at the crime scene there, Jerry?
I don't know. Test it, see if it is.
No, we did. How would it be there, Jerry?
I don't know.
What happened that night?
Wait for the test to come back.
Jerry,
I don't think it did.
It did.
All right, so this is really interesting. This is the interview with Jerry Burns. Basically, the police went to his place of work that day, and after this is when he got arrested. And it's important to note that he doesn't know he's being recorded. This is a hidden camera right now that's on that detective. So Ashley, while we're watching this, comment on really the method of the questioning from this detective and how Jerry's answering these questions. It's fascinating to watch.
That was quite an interesting reaction because, you know, most people, and again, you can't predict how somebody's going to react. And I, you know, always tell my clients, hey, let's not talk to the police until you've talked to me, right? But I believe that what is going through Jerry's mind right now, and this is complete speculation on my part, is that they don't really have any DNA, that he's voluntarily giving his DNA now because he knows they don't have anything else, and that if he voluntarily gives his DNA, that's going to make him look innocent. It would make anyone look innocent, right? If you're voluntarily giving DNA evidence. And when the officer says, and this was very smart on the officer's part, I really have to say I applaud him for this. The way he said, well, we've already tested it on some DNA on something that you've discarded. And Jerry's first question, instead of, you know, being, wait, why do you think I did this, you know, or anything else, you know, why do you think I was there? What are you talking about? Was, what evidence that I discarded or what DNA that I discarded? It's kind of an interesting thing to be concerned about when you've clearly just given them a DNA sample 2 seconds before they mentioned that. So you know that they have your DNA now, and now you're questioning, wait, what's the other DNA that I discarded that you might have? just seems like a weird thing to ask. So I'm not really sure what that means, but I think it's an unusual answer to that question.
Yeah, and it was also interesting how he was like, well, test it and make sure it's mine. And the detective goes, well, we kind of already did that. So really interesting. We have more from that interview we're going to play for you. We got to take a quick break right now, though. Stay with us here on Law and Crime.
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason. And that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made. Painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
We believe in patriotism. We believe in our nation's youth. We believe veterans earn their benefits through their service to our nation. We believe in a strong national security. We believe in our country. For 100 years, veterans have been impacting our nation through the American Legion, and we believe it makes a difference. If you believe, learn more at legion.org/webelieve.
Anyone can fall victim to moving fraud. Know your rights and responsibilities.
We had really signed off on a price, and that was about it.
Without a signed written estimate, movers may try to charge more.
They were charging us now $2,000 instead of the agreed upon $900.
And may hold your items hostage until you pay.
Not only had they roughly handled or mishandled, it seemed like they had purposely destroyed things.
Visit protectyourmove.gov to download a free moving fraud prevention guide. Search for registered movers and view their complaint histories. Move with confidence.
And welcome back to Law and Crime. We are breaking down the Jerry Burns trial right now, and we've been looking at the interview with police. This was from the day he got arrested, prior to his arrest, when a detective showed up at his workplace with a hidden camera on him, and we've been watching that interview. Let's continue to watch more.
Did you murder someone that night, Jerry?
Test the DNA.
Jerry.
Test the DNA.
Why did this happen, Jerry?
Test the DNA.
What happened?
I don't know. I was not there that night.
You don't know why this happened?
I was not there that night.
Well, we know better than that, Jerry. You know better than that. You know I'm not lying. Okay?
I don't know.
You do know, Jerry.
I don't know what game's playing.
You know for a fact I'm not lying about that. Okay? You know for a fact that I'm not lying about that. Okay, that's the one thing we all know.
We don't know that.
We do.
Well, I don't assume you're lying.
You don't assume
you believe what you believe.
Well, I appreciate you giving me that. What I don't believe is that you don't remember being there that night. And I'm starting to feel like your reluctance to explain why.
All right, we're gonna actually be able to go live right now to Burns's trial. They have just come back from a break with a new witness on the stand. It looks like it is an inmate. We don't have any information more right now, but let's go listen live to find out.
Examination, Mr. Maybanks.
Mr. Allison, you can go this microphone. Talk into that for us.
Okay. Yes, sir.
How old of a man are you?
I'm 53 years old, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Allison came to the courtroom today wearing a little bit different clothing than the people that we have been seeing. So, do you have some pending criminal charges?
Right now, I'm in Lynn County.
Okay.
And I have some pending.
All right, and we're going to respect your rights, and not ask you about those charges because those are still pending, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself in your background.
I'm 53 years old. Went to Oklahoma State University and did some student teaching in Omaha, Nebraska, and moved to San Diego, California when I went to Iraq for 2 years in 1990 to 1992. And when I came back from Iraq, I lived in San Diego and had a couple problems with marijuana. Had 2 charges. And that's pretty much the history right there.
Okay. And so you said you went to Iraq. Were you a member of the armed forces?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What branch?
In the Navy.
And how long were you in the Navy?
4 years.
Obviously, from what you're telling us, you are on active duty then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you were ordered to serve overseas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many years were you in Iraq?
I was 2 years.
Okay. What, tell us about that.
Well, I actually joined the service just to go to the war, actually. That's why I joined. And I went to boot camp in San Diego and went directly to Iraq, and then came back for 2 years in San Diego.
And so you get.
May we encourage the witness to pull the microphone closer?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Feel free to speak right into that.
Okay.
If you would, Michael. So you got back from Iraq, and you were living in San Diego circa 1992, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What'd you do with your life then?
I worked a couple different jobs. I was doing the student teaching for a while, but I didn't really feel like that was for me, so I got into some sales. I worked with Sears in installations, and I opened a swimming pool business in San Diego. And I bought a house in 2001 in San Diego, and I got married in 1997. I have 2 kids, and my ex-wife, she's Mexican-American. She just passed away 4 months ago from a stroke.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
When you lived in, so you have 2 children.
Yes, sir.
How old are your kids?
My boy Michael is 23. He graduated from Arizona State University, and he was working in Hong Kong, and he came back because of the accident with my ex-wife, and I have a daughter who's 17.
And where are they?
Right now, they're in Arizona.
So, given your circumstances, you haven't had a chance to see them much then?
No, not with what has been going on, no. No, sir.
Well, Michael, your story doesn't sound much different than some other people, so can you tell us what happened as far as, you mentioned something about marijuana. Did you find yourself in some trouble?
Yeah, I had when I came back from the war, I ended up having a substance abuse problem, and that kind of led to some bad decisions. Being in San Diego, it's real common for someone who has a drug problem to drive a car across the border, or a lot of other little things that you can do to support your habit, and that's kind of what I did.
What kind of drugs were you using?
All right, Ashley, we know this is Michael Allison. He's talking about how he was in the Navy, he served in Iraq. Not exactly sure how he's related here to Jerry, or if he is. Do you have any idea where this could be going?
I'm not sure. I mean, he's either being used as some type of character witness or potentially a witness to the events of what happened that evening. Perhaps he was around at the same time. He looks to be about the same age as the defendant, so it's possible he may have some information either about the victim's lifestyle or the defendant's lifestyle at the time. But right now, I'm not quite clear on what is going on.
All right, Ashley McMahan, thank you. We will surely find out soon. We got to take a quick break right now on Law and Crime. Plenty more after this. Stay with us here.
What would happen if I had to pick up the phone, call 911 for one of my family members or one of my neighbors? What would I do if no one was on the other end to respond? What if there was no 911? So you can be a part of the solution.
Anybody can be a firefighter, male, female, younger, older.
We have school teachers, we have leaders in business.
It's me, you, anyone that wants to be.
There is no typical firefighter.
Everybody can make something, because I think everyone has a spark of creativity, and the reason that I have to keep making is because I don't think my life would be as fulfilling without it. If you make things yourself, that means you're not cowering in fear. You're out there taking chances. That, I think, is my way of saying I love you to the world. All right, now I want to hear why you make.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
Can I give you a hand?
Interstate moving is much more complicated than just moving within your city or town.
Anyone can fall victim to moving fraud.
Do not sign a contract without knowing who you're dealing with.
Do the research on the company that's physically doing your moving.
Do as much diligence as you can and document as well as you can.
Do Better Business Bureau searches. I would Google the company online.
And the best place to find information is through the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Learn how to protect your belongings. Visit protectyourmove.gov.
All across the country, people are coming together to speed up what we can learn about health. The All of Us Research Program is calling on 1 million people to join us as we try to change the future of health. For your family, for future generations, for all of us. Visit joinallofus.org and find out how you can become 1 in a million.
Yes. Oh, hi. I suppose you're wondering what an A-list celebrity like me is doing in a place like this. You must know, I'm saving the world. Oh, hi, Beth. Yep, saving the world again. Did you know that 40% of all the food produced in the United States is thrown away? That means everything that went into that food, the pesticides, the water, the land, was all for nothing. Just look at this perfectly good food thrown in the trash. The pizza with extra Cheerios, these goldfish and Band-Aid tacos. And just look at this perfect trash burger. This pasta dog looks delicious.
You don't have to dumpster dive like Ed Begley Jr. to save the planet. Fight food waste by shopping smart and using what you buy before it gets trashed.
That's way better. Ooh, arugula.
Do your part and find out other world-saving tips at betterthaned.org.